So in the previous lecture we had discussed that a female baby before the female baby is born, in her ovary she has already created lots of primary oocytes, and these primary oocytes, they are arrested in meiosis 1, in the diplotin phase of prophase 1 of meiosis. So these poor primary oocytes, they were arrested in the diplotin phase of meiosis 1, and they are surrounded by a layer of these flattened cells. And this layer of flattened cell, these cells, they are called, what are they called? Follicular cells. And this structure as a whole, this layer along with these primary oocytes, this complete structure is called primordial follicle. So this unborn, this fetus, this female fetus, she had formed a lots of, about 4 lakh, I think more than that, lots of, I'm not good at remembering numbers by the way. So she formed lots of these primordial follicles, right? And they were arrested in meiosis 1, right? And as she is born, and they remain arrested before till the puberty, right? And as she is born, and then before the puberty starts, a lots of these primordial follicles, they die out waiting to be resumed, right? They undergo atresia. Yes, you have a question?
What is atresia?
Atresia, it is just a fancy word of apoptosis of these cells, right? Apoptosis of these follicles. Apoptosis means programmed cell death. So it is nothing to be worried about. It is just apoptosis, right? So this unborn baby, this fetus, she has now become a beautiful teenage girl, right? And puberty hasn't started yet. Puberty is just gonna start now. And here is again the schematic diagram of her ovary, and she is having about 40,000 primordial follicles at this stage, with primary oocyte arrested in meiosis 1. All other primordial follicles, they have died now. So we will discuss about this one primordial follicle right now. And this primordial follicle, it can now grow in size. Its follicles, it can grow in size, it can increase in size. So these squamous or flattened cells, they have now become low columnar or cuboidal, right? They are still follicular cells, but they have become low columnar to cuboidal, right? Now this primordial follicle is no more a primordial follicle. Now it is called primary follicle. And because it is still surrounded by a single layer of these follicular cells, it is called unilamellar primary follicle. Uni means single, lamellar means layer. Unilamellar primary follicle. Primordial follicle is also unilamellar, but because it is obvious, so we don't call it unilamellar, right? So here there are two processes that are going on side by side. There is the growth of this oocyte, growth and development of this oocyte, that is called oogenesis, and along with that there is growth and development of these follicular cells, that is called folliculogenesis. Although this is the topic of oogenesis, but we cannot discuss the oogenesis without discussing folliculogenesis, right? Some books discuss folliculogenesis with the female reproductive cycle, but I am discussing it here with this because it is very important and crucial to understand these processes side by side, right? So this is primary follicle, that is unilamellar with the primary oocyte, and right now it does not have, it cannot recognize its mate, the sperm. It cannot recognize and bind the sperm. So this oocyte as well as these follicular cells, they secrete between them a glycoprotein coat, right? And this glycoprotein coat, it harbors special receptors, special species specific sperm receptors, right? And this glycoprotein coat, it is translucent and we call it zona pellucida. Pellucida means transparent, so this is zona pellucida, right? Now talking about follicular cells, these follicular cells, although they have grown in size, but they cannot divide, they cannot replicate, they cannot proliferate without the orders from the higher centers. So from the hypothalamus of this teenage girl, GnRH is released. What is GnRH? Gonadotrophin releasing hormone. So gonadotrophin releasing factor or gonadotrophin releasing hormone is released from her hypothalamus and it passes to the anterior pituitary, and here it will stimulate certain cells to cause production and release of two substances, two hormones, FSH and LH. FSH is follicle stimulating hormone and LH is luteinizing hormone. So these FSH and LH, mainly FSH, acts upon these follicles and it orders these follicles to divide, to replicate, right? To proliferate. So because of this, the real name of this FSH hormone is follicle stimulating hormone. So it stimulates the follicles, so it is called follicle stimulating hormone. So under the influence of FSH mainly and to some extent LH, what happens that they replicate, follicular cells replicate, and now it becomes multilaminar. Remember, 15 to 20 primary follicles start growing under the influence of FSH and LH each month, right? But at the end of the month, only one remains, that is the dominant follicle. We will discuss the details in next lecture, the lecture of female reproductive cycles, but you just have to remember this important thing, right? So primary follicle or multilaminar primary follicle, you know, there are certain connective tissue cells here in the ovary. Interstitial cells are connective tissue cells. These connective tissue cells, they surround this. What they do? They surround this follicle and they form two layers. They form a casing, right? They form a casing or covering of this follicle, and this covering is called theca. This word theca, it simply means casing or covering. So this theca consists of two layers. The inner cellular layer that is rich in this interstitial cells, or they are now called theca cells. This inner layer is called theca interna. So this is theca interna, right? It is more cellular, and this outer one, it is less cellular and more vascular. It is theca externa. So theca interna and theca externa, these two layers are formed right now. Clear? So you know, in males, these theca cells, not theca cells, in males these interstitial cells, what they are called? Yes,
Leydig cells?
Leydig cells. In male they are called Leydig cells. Here they are not Leydig cells, but they are theca cells. So you can say in a sense that theca cells are female counterpart of Leydig cells. And because of their inherent nature, what they do in males, by the way?
They produce
Yes.
testosterone.
Yes, in males they produce testosterone, but here they are also producing testosterone. You know, nature cannot be changed. By nature they are like those Leydig cells, and they synthesize testosterone, and they synthesize testosterone on the order of what thing?
LH?
LH. In males, they are synthesizing testosterone on the orders of LH. L for Leydig cell, L for LH, luteinizing hormone. So here also these not Leydig cells, they are not called Leydig cells here, they are called theca cells here. Now they are synthesizing under the order of LH, they are synthesizing male androgen, right? Testosterone and some other androgens, right? So testosterone is being synthesized by them. But fortunately, they are present in close proximity to these follicular cells. So these follicular cells, they pick up this testosterone and convert it into estrogen. These follicular cells are real girlish cells. They love perfumes, the smell, the scent like things, and one of that is aromatase. What I mean by this is that these follicular cells, they contain a special hormone, not hormone, special enzyme called aromatase. Aromatase enzymes convert testosterone into estrogen, right? What causes this production of aromatase enzyme in these follicular cells? Yes, it's FSH. FSH causes the this production of aromatase, and this aromatase converts the testosterone that is synthesized by theca cells, that is picked up by these follicular cells, and it is converted into estrogen. So what if I ask you that which cells synthesize estrogen? Yes, what will you say? Theca cells or follicular cells?
Theca cells produce testosterone, which undergo processing to produce, and then they form estrogen.
Yes, that is processed by theca cells produce testosterone that is picked up, and fortunately that is picked up and processed by these follicular cells to form estrogen. And that is the reason that these cells, they are present in close proximity to these follicular cells, right? So estrogen has many important functions. It is major female sex hormone, right?
Then what is progesterone?
Good question. Progesterone is also female sex hormone, but I like to call it, rather scientists like to call it, pregnancy hormone. P for progesterone, P for pregnancy. Although it is also produced in non-pregnant females, but its major function is pregnancy support. We will discuss later that progesterone, it is very important for pregnancy. It maintains the pregnancy, right? We will discuss these things later. So estrogen, it imparts primary and secondary sexual characteristics to the female. So from here it diffuses into blood to impart those characteristics, but it has some local functions here that I will discuss just now. But here another point, that these follicular cells, because they are converting testosterone into estrogen, they are now full of granules of estrogen, right? These follicular cells, they are now full of estrogen granules. That is why they are at this stage, they are now called granulosa cell. Granulosa comes from the term granules. So follicular cell, this term follicular cell as well as granulosa cell, it is usually used interchangeably. You can call them follicular cell or you can call them granulosa cell. But I think at this stage it is more appropriate, at this stage and beyond, it is more appropriate to call these cells granulosa cells rather than follicular cells. At this stage you may call it follicular cells, right? So granulosa cells are formed, and due to estrogen, LH receptors are also produced on these follicular or granulosa cells, right? So estrogen, it causes the priming of LH receptors on, what is this, granulosa cells. LH receptors, they are usually, before this time, they were usually present mainly on theca cells, right? Theca cells were harboring LH receptors, but now these, due to the action of estrogen, now these granulosa cells, they also start to harbor LH receptors. We will discuss its significance later, right? And under the influence of FSH and to some extent by the LH, they grow further. Now they have acquired many layers, maybe up to 8 to 10 layers, right? They are now, they are still primary follicle and they are still multilaminar. Along with that, let's not forget that primary oocyte that is still arrested, but this primary oocyte, it grows in size, it enlarges, it accumulates lots of cytoplasm as well as lots of organelles and some nutrition as well for the embryo, for the baby, right? And due to actions of estrogen, lots of almost all these granulosa cells, they have acquired, they are now equipped with LH receptors, right? Now they can also listen to orders of LH. Previously only theca cells can listen to them. Now these cells can also listen to orders of LH. Clear up till now? Now along with that, special fluid is secreted by this follicular cells. We will discuss the details of fluid in next lecture, right? And due to secretion of this fluid, small pockets of fluid form in between them, right? And then these pocket at this stage, when these pockets of fluid are there, at this stage, now this follicle is called secondary follicle, and this oocyte is secondary oocyte. No, it is still primary oocyte. So remember, this is a secondary follicle harboring inside it primary oocyte, right? And these pockets, they then coalesce to form a single large cavity, and the single large cavity filled with follicular fluid, it is called antrum, and it is still secondary follicle. Now you remember these LH receptors, granulosa cells, they are happy because they can listen to orders of LH. Now at this stage, it is now the mid of cycle. At this stage, in the mid of cycle, there is sudden rise in level of LH hormone. We will discuss why that happens later, but there is sudden rise in LH level mid of cycle, during the mid of cycle, and this is called LH surge. So, but before that, let me tell you something, that these cells, these follicular or granulosa cells that just surround this follicle, they are called cumulus oophorus. What they are called? Cumulus oophorus. Cumulus means cloud, oophorus means that they are surrounding this oocyte. So it looks like a cloud that is surrounding this ovum, developing ovum or oocyte. So it is cumulus oophorus. So I told you that there is LH surge, and this oocyte that is still arrested right now, it is still arrested in meiosis 1 diplotin stage, and when there is LH surge, this oocyte is now released from the jail. It is now released from the arrest, right? It is now allowed to complete meiosis 1. You know which cells caused this arrest at the first place? These were these follicular cells. You remember that these follicular cells, they were releasing oocyte maturation inhibitor factors that causes this arrest, that caused this arrest. Now what I think of this story, that this LH, it is like lieutenant general, it is like army chief, and these are little policemen. These are little policemen that have arrested this oocyte, and now because they have this LH receptors or special ears, and now these policemen, they can listen to order of their army chief. They can listen to order of this LH, Lieutenant General, right? They can listen to it is orders, and on the order of these, they will, on the orders of LH, they will release the arrest, right? And now, why the LH orders them to release the arrest? Because now the follicle has grown to its fullest, as well as at this stage oocyte has also grown to its fullest. Now it is no more a kid. Now it can complete the meiosis, right? Now it is allowed to complete the meiosis because it has now fully grown. I told you that about 15 to 20 follicles start growing, but all those follicles that initially started growing, not all of them are fully grown. Not all of them started uh, producing enough estrogen to cause formation of enough LH receptors. So those cannot listen to order of LH, and thus those follicles cannot resume meiosis, right? So those follicles that cannot resume meiosis, they again die out by the process of follicular atresia. And this dominant follicle that is now fully grown, that is independent of FSH, now it will complete meiosis 1. Clear up till now? And what happened here, that it has completed meiosis 1 and it is divided into 2, right? But meiosis in oocyte does not happen like this. Are you getting the point? What happens actually here is that one of the daughter cell, after it has completed meiosis 1, one of the daughter cell, it has all the cytoplasm, while the other daughter cell, it has very little cytoplasm. So this is the selfish behavior of this developing oocyte, that it has stolen even the cytoplasm and organelles of its sibling, right? Now this primary oocyte is not primary oocyte because it has completed meiosis 1. Now it is secondary oocyte. And this secondary oocyte, it quickly start meiosis 2 as well, but it is arrested in metaphase 2. And this little cell with very little cytoplasm, almost no cytoplasm, it is called polar body. Now the question arises here again, that why this selfish behavior, dear developing ovum? The answer to this question is, there are two reasons for this. One reason is that it has to accumulate all the cytoplasm for the sake of baby. It's a necessary evil here. That sperm, that lazy sperm, it is not bringing any cytoplasm. So almost all the cytoplasm and organelles, they have to be contributed by ovum, right? Sperm do not contribute to cytoplasm, right? It contributes to nucleus but not to cytoplasm and mitochondria and other organelles as well. So because of this, cytoplasm is mainly contributed by ovum, right? But the question is, why it accumulates lots of cytoplasm at this stage? I will answer this question in the lecture of polar body, so you have to watch that lecture, right? We have separate lecture on that. So secondary oocyte, it has accumulated all the cytoplasm and organelles, completed the meiosis 1 and started meiosis 2, but it is now arrested in metaphase 2. Along with that, a polar body is formed. Now this fully grown dominant follicle, Now it is ready to be released in uterine tube, in fallopian tube, in the hopes that it will get fertilized. Right now, this pre-ovulatory follicle, right? This pre-ovulatory follicle at this stage, or dominant follicle, it is called Graafian follicle, or some people like to call it tertiary follicle. There is nothing difficult to understand here. It is a type of follicle, secondary follicle, that is now fully grown, that has completed meiosis 1 and started meiosis 2, and it is now ready to be released in uterine tube by the process of ovulation. Now we will not discuss how ovulation occurs. We will discuss that in later lecture. But here, as it grows further in size, here an elevation that is called stigma is formed here, and here this part of ovarian wall, it ruptures and it is released, right? So here it is released into uterine tube. This secondary oocyte, it is released into uterine tube, and you can see it is surrounded by, here we have a polar body, and it is surrounded by, what is this, zona pellucida, and granulosa cells are also there, right? These granulosa cells, they form a special pattern here that they look like a crown, so this is called corona radiata. Some people think that this is cumulus oophorus. My friends, this is not cumulus oophorus. These cells, most of these cells, they were forming that cumulus oophorus, but now when they are released into uterine tube, now it is no more called cumulus oophorus. Now they are called corona radiata. Well, in a true sense, they were those cells. They were those cells that are forming cumulus oophorus, but right now they are called corona radiata, right? So this secondary oocyte, here it is due to the ciliary action of this uterine tube or fallopian tube, it comes into ampulla of this fallopian tube, and here they keep on waiting for the sperm to come. And as soon as the sperm come and attaches with this sperm receptor on zona pellucida, it quickly completes its meiosis 1. Meiosis 2, sorry. It quickly completes its meiosis 2 and forms the second polar body, and then it matures to form complete mature ovum. And then of course fertilization will occur and it will form zygote, that we will discuss in lecture of fertilization. But what happens if sperm never come? Then this poor secondary oocyte, it is still secondary oocyte, it keeps on waiting for the sperm in the hope that maybe the sperm will come. But sadly, when the sperm do not come, it dies out, maybe of depression or I don't know what, but it dies out. Actually, macrophages eat them, right? And this sad story ends here. And this remaining ruptured follicle, what it will do? It will accumulate lots of fat globules inside it, cholesterol inside it, and it will start secreting progesterone. It will still secrete some amount of estrogen, but mainly at this stage after ovulation, it will mainly secrete what is that, progesterone, right? And now it is called corpus luteum. You know why LH is called luteinizing hormone? LH causes ovulation. It should be called, I think it should be called ovulation hormone, but because it is called ovulation, this ruptured follicle, it is converted into this yellow structure that is called corpus luteum. So along with ovulation, it is also causing formation of corpus luteum. It is converting the ruptured follicle into corpus luteum. We can say it is luteinizing It is luteinizing ruptured follicle. So that's why it is called luteinizing hormone, right? So this was about oogenesis after puberty. And here the last point is that if oogenesis, if sperm do not come and this secondary oocyte, it dies out, what will happen that there will be shedding of uterine wall. We will discuss in next lecture. But then another cycle will start, and again 15 to 20 new primary follicles will start growing, and this cycle will continue and continue up till menopause, right? Let's review all these things. So this is this young teenage girl, which is just going to start puberty, and her ovary consists of lots of primordial follicles. And primordial follicles, they consist of this oocyte, primary oocyte, surrounded by this flattened layer of follicular cell. So follicular cell grow and they form primary follicle along with a glycoprotein coat that is formed, zona pellucida that is formed, right? Now it cannot replicate or proliferate. It needs orders from FSH and LH, and FSH and LH, they are released by the orders of GnRH, gonadotrophin releasing hormone. So these gonadotrophs, FSH and LH, they cause the growth of these proliferation of these cells, follicular cells, and it has now become multi-layered. So it is primary follicle that is multilaminar, right? Then what happens that interstitial cells surround it to form two layers or coverings, that is theca interna, that is more cellular, and theca externa, that is more vascular and less cellular. Theca cells under the order of LH synthesize testosterone, which is picked up by these follicular cells to form estrogen. Now because it is producing estrogen, so estrogen granules form in these follicular cells, and now these follicular cells at this stage with these granules, they are called granulosa cells. Estrogen has different functions. One of the function is that it causes priming of LH receptors on these granulosa cells. Now these granulosa cells can also listen to order of LH, and further growth, and then and this primary follicle has now lots of layers of what is this, granulosa cells. Then these follicular cells, they secrete pockets of follicular fluid and they coalesce to form antrum, and now this primary follicle is converted into secondary follicle, right? Now there will be, in the mid of cycle, there will be LH surge, right? And due to LH surge, what will happen that follicular cells will, or granulosa cell will listen to orders of this LH hormone to release the arrest, and there will be resumption of meiosis 1, right? They will complete the meiosis 1, and it will now form secondary oocyte that is now arrested in metaphase 2, right? And along with that, polar body will be formed, and now it is fully mature follicle. Now it is called Graafian follicle, or some people like to call it tertiary follicle. Now it will be released into uterine tube by the process of ovulation, and now it is waiting for the sperm to come, and if the sperm comes, it will fertilize it, and before fertilization, it will complete the meiosis 2, right? Otherwise it may die out, and it is converted into corpus luteum, right? Corpus luteum secretes progesterone and it maintains the uterine wall. We will discuss in next lecture. Clear up till now? Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, please press thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel. Please give your precious comments regarding this video, and please support me on Patreon. Thank you so much.